the chapter on children with disabilities as part of the Global Report on Children Deprived of Their Liberty, I think it's a great opportunity to discuss as per how grave forms of deprivation of liberty are affecting in a disproportionate manner children with disabilities. To start with, I think that it's important to highlight that we have a very strong international legal framework that protects, of course, all children from deprivation of liberty, but also specifically children with disabilities. And the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities specifically has two very strong dispositions that protect children with disabilities from facing these kind of situations. And I think that it's very important that a clear message is sent to the global community that deprivation of liberty on the basis of disability is prohibited. That there cannot be, that any deprivation of liberty that is based on a disability or the perception of the existence of a disability should be prohibited. This is a very strong line. In the same direction, I think that we need to think about how to connect that with the prohibition of any other kinds of discriminatory or unlawful deprivation of liberty for children. The good thing about the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and this is what I'm presenting in my chapter, is that because of the grave situation that children with disabilities face when it comes to detention and de facto forms of deprivation of liberty, is that the CRPD has raised the standard. So we have a very high standard of protection for children with disabilities. And that, of course, is pushing the discussion and changing the focus of the international discussion, not so much on how to regulate or safeguard the conditions of detention or how or when or how the last resort clause should work, but on the contrary, since the prohibition is total, you cannot deprive children because of their disabilities, then the focus of the discussion is now on what are the alternatives, how can we provide the support in the community, what are the services that need to be developed, how we can promote and potentialize the human capital of children with disabilities. What is the support networks that we have to develop? How do we bring the voices of children with disabilities to this conversation? Participation and inclusion being fundamental pillars, of course, the best interest of the child. But bearing in mind that for children with disabilities, it is fundamental to live and to grow and to benefit from their families and, when not possible, from a family environment. And I think that that's also something that it comes very clear out of my chapter, that any form of alternative care, as the convention clearly says on Article 23.5, should be a family-based solution, right? We discuss about foster care, about adoption, about a family setting, about extended family, etc. But that is the limit, and that's why we have increased the level of protection for children with disabilities. And what is, I think, very important is that this is a response, a clear response to the reality. In my work as Special Rapporteur, what I'm seeing in any country that I visit is that there are new institutions are being created, that specific forms of deprivation of liberty are being created for children with disabilities, that there is criminalization of some behaviors and some situations in which children with disabilities will definitely fit. So you are seeing that children with autism, children with psychosocial disabilities, often referred as mental health conditions, are overrepresented in some settings of deprivation of liberty precisely because of their disability. And this is why we need to really act, increase. There has to be, and I think one of the biggest calls of this global effort to end deprivation of liberty of children is to call for deinstitutionalization, to end the practice of any form of institutionalization for children, and to find, and I think to mobilize resources, both financial and human, to invest in this transformative change that we need. If we don't put the standard very high, we are not going to get the conversation where it needs to be. The conversation needs to be, and how do we eradicate this, and what are the alternatives that we're going to develop to take care of all children in a way that will be conducive to develop their full potential and to enjoy all their human rights on an equal basis with any other child.